Go ahead.
Okay,
We're going to do roll call.
please.
Okay, Counselor Albert,
Here.
Counselor Colby,
Here.
Counselor Ganong,
Here.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Here.
Counselor Ward,
Here.
Counselor Lunt,
Here.
Counselor Fellows.
Here.
All right, so on to the Finance Committee. Heather Ward,
Here.
Noli Lopez,
Here.
Curtis Lunt,
Here.
Dan Lehman,
Here.
Tracy Austin, Rick Green, Haley McCrader. All right, so I'll go on to the Planning Board. Sean Carr, Chris Houston,
Here.
Liam Cool,
Here.
Pat Malloy, and Lisa Ward. Okay,
Can you also read into the other staff that are actually represented here tonight too?
all right, we have Steve Avoli, Randy Sear,
Here.
Ryan McGee,
Here.
Kathy Malloy,
Here.
Mark Stevens,
Here.
Kayla Tierney,
Here.
Brett Richardson, Nate Leclerc, Dennis Douglas, Bill Alexander.
Here.
Can
Okay.
you add Alan Ulat from the school department to your?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you for that. Norm, where
Yeah.
did you, please, Pledge of Allegiance.
Gotcha. All right, throw it. There we go.
Everybody please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of the
United
United States of America.
America,
and
and
to
to
the
the
republic
republic
for which it
which
stands,
it stands,
one nation,
One
nation,
Under God,
indivisible,
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 liberty,
with liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Thank you all. All right. If you don't mind, for the benefit of just kind of logistics for tonight, a couple of things that have come up just to make sure Diane or somebody gets a chance to be able to present. First would be, there was a question asked last week associated with the charter and the specifics of the presentation from the town. Diane, can you share the charter?
Yes, Kayla's gonna do that for me right now.
This is the language that's actually there. The reference that I would actually point out is that shall outline the fiscal policies of the town and school department respectively for the year, expenditures and revenues, and for reasons of the same, summarize the debt position of the town and management respectively. The point that I would make with that is in Diane's presentation last week, she referenced that the 7% starting point actually included an understanding of last year's revenues until better were known. And for illustration purposes, I asked her to send out to you what those revenues were. So she emailed that out. One of the emails that actually came either Friday or Monday, I forget which. So I guess the point that I would make is that for a clear starting point, this meets the letter associated with the charter that we are in compliance. So anything that I'd forgotten in that, Diane?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head here. I did send out the revenues as you see them in this current budget. I sent that out this afternoon, this morning or this afternoon. I think the three major items, we have the rec department revenues and we have the revenue sharing and excise tax. Revenue sharing is still up in the air. The Maine Revenue Services still has not posted their expected revenue for all the municipalities for the upcoming year. Last year, they posted it in early March, and we still don't have anything yet. I have no idea which way that's gonna go, so we need to wait a little bit longer. The same with the excise tax, because of the governor allowed people to wait until July to register their vehicles if they expired. She allowed that to happen with the expectation that everybody that had an expired registration re-register their vehicles in July. So part of the July revenues that we received can be attributed back to the prior fiscal year. I have no way of knowing how much that is, but that would be one reason our revenues may be up, but it's still too early to determine that. So as we go through the budget process and before you make your determination on what you're going to do for the actual budget, I will have some revenues for you at that time.
Thank you, Diane. The next order, an observation from last year to this year. Last year, we made the jump, instead of actually forcing the issue with printed budget books that everybody was accustomed to, Diane sent out jump drives with the same information. From an outsider's perspective, looking at it for the first time, I will say that it's a little busy. If you guys are prepared, Diane, I don't know if Kayla.
I'm gonna have Kayla put up what's on the jump drive, and we'll go through that a little bit for you.
Just give an overview of what's there.
Right.
Sorry, I'm trying to see it and it's not giving me the option to share my file folder.
Can you call it up, Kayla, on your desktop and share your screen?
It is on my desktop.
Let me double check out here.
Yeah, it's just not giving me that option on the Zoom share screen.
So can you go through it, like starting with the budget, Kayla, and just,
Yeah, so open your flash drive, you're gonna see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 file folders, and the first one's gonna be budget. And if you open that file folder, within that, there's gonna be 2 PDFs and an Excel document. The PDFs are the executive summary of the FY22 proposed budget and an overall summary showing the increases and decreases in a PDF format. And then that Excel is your proposed managerial budget for FY22. Within that Excel, you're seeing the managerial proposed expense budget, and then it's comparing to the initial budget that the department heads had put together. And then it's then comparing to FY21. And there's other tabs within that Excel that you can see FY20 and FY19 for further comparison. And then if you go into the next file folder, those are the budget explanations. Those are all PDFs organized by departments, and we refer to them as organization levels, which you'll start with 120, 20, 500. So all of your departments, all of your explanations are held within that file folder, and all those explanations support the Excel document for the proposed budget. The next file folder is the CIP, which is of topic tonight. And the next one is miscellaneous information. Those are going to be county taxes. They're going to be Lisbon emergency. They're going to be all those other miscellaneous items in PDF format, which again support the Excel budget. And the final file folder is a payroll benefit, and those are going to show your position changes, your payroll benefit comparison between 21 and 22, and wage by position. And the last item in the drive is the manager budget message, and that I had labeled as 1 just to open first and then proceed down to the file folders.
A couple of things from that. Diane has sent out, she sent the original jump drive and then she sent you guys an adjusted budget, the fund balance policies, those kinds of things. I would just add them into that content. What Kayla added in that new file is if there's a reduction or an adjustment to the budget, you'll see that adjustment actually, so you can have the original budget as submitted and that progress to Don's point of a 3% is how we're making tracking as we're going through that process. The other piece that I would highlight, I use in the Excel spreadsheet that Kayla is going to be bringing up, if we can get it on the screen as we go through the individual divisions tonight. That second tab, that's the only place you're going to get 1 year's worth of history. It's FY20 is the last completed full year. So the stuff that you're tracking, Diane gave you a date as of some time in March. I want to say it was like the 6th of March or whatever it was. That's as of that point. But if you want to see how an entire fiscal year looks on some of these accounts, go to that second tab because you can see that information right there as well. But for the benefit of the new folks at the Finance Committee and at least a couple of counselors that's in that, we had the benefit of a printed budget and it was all set up so you could actually follow through. But as we play along, you'll get the gist for that and be able to compare 1 year to the next. Are there any questions on the content of that before we move on? Because I think it just made sense for an overview. Hearing none, Diane, let's.
Want to do the comparison report, Alan?
For the benefit of go to the order of what we actually have for an agenda. I think for the benefit of Bill and Alan here, let's start
Okay.
with the CIP if you don't mind.
Right. We do have a PowerPoint that we want to present first, and then we can go right to the CIP if you don't mind.
Please.
All right, so here is the PowerPoint presentation of the capital improvement plan. I wanted to first touch on the introduction just so everyone here is on the same page, and for the listening too. The capital improvement plan is a document that focuses on the implementation of community goals through detailed recommendations on capital spending and needs for the current and forecasted future fiscal years. The CIP to be submitted to the council is to be broken down by town, presented here on a departmental level, by school department, and lastly by water department. The plan is presented on a 5-year module as it is stated in the charter, and then on a secondary additional 5 years to give a 10-year module as requested previously to just show further out on those fiscal years. About the plan, the CIP demonstrates specific projects, amounts of those projects, and the sources of funding for those projects. This document is a framework for making the best use of financial resources. And within the CIP, a section of footnotes will follow. So this report this year is going to look different than what has been seen in the past because each department is supported by footnotes immediately after each of the department's requests on that 5 and on that 10-year request. These footnotes go into more depth about the capital items being requested in the upcoming fiscal year. In addition to the 5 and 10-year plan forecast, this report includes estimated annual costs of operating and maintaining vehicles and equipment, as well as the current mileage for those vehicles. By understanding these measures, it helps us to understand whether we continue to maintenance that item or to earmark it for a replacement. The debt structure, which includes bonds and leases, is included in this report. And again, that's to support all of these items being requested. Each department has submitted their request for capital needs. What is a capital improvement? I wanted to put this in here to really focus on what the program policy is stating And that is major fiscal expenditure, which is made infrequently or which is not recurring and includes one or more of the following: acquisition of land, construction or expansion of a public facility, street or utility, non-recurring rehabilitation or construction of an asset, provided the cost is more than $25,000 and extends the useful life of the asset, design or programming related to an individual project, or any item or piece of equipment that will be bonded or budgeted in more than one fiscal year. I would also like to highlight here that this includes assets that would hold a useful life of 5 years or longer, and it includes machinery, equipment, or vehicles that are greater than or equal to $10,000. These may be one-time purchases or reoccurring based on the established useful life of the asset once it is placed into service. We're going to go in on high level showing the 5-year CIP plan. So this is the Town of Lisbon summary 5-year CIP. It is broken down by department totals and by each forecasted fiscal year. So for forecasted year 6/30/2022, total capital expenditures is $1,852,114. And as presented in the chart, you can see where each of those amounts are by department, which we will then go into further throughout the evening. And this is going to show that additional 5 years out of what we're forecasting for capital expenditures. And again, by department level. I wanted to include here the debt structure on a 5-year, and the next slide will show the 10-year. The debt structure supports the plan, and it shows us what we have in forecasted 2022 of $601,819. As you can see the difference between fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, there are going to be 2 bonds that are going to be paid in full. And then you can see the progression of that for the remainder of the columns, that as we go along, we're paying down these bonds. The proposed RD loan noted here, that's going to be in reference to the larger sewer project, which is supported by RD loan and grant. And here's that 10-year structure. So with all of that, I wanted to do a highlight here of, on a department level, what those larger dollar thresholds, meeting the charter, meeting that program policy of 5-year useful life or greater and $10,000 or more. And then for any other CIPs that are under that $10,000 threshold, those are going to be earmarked in the footnotes of the report. So highlights here for police, we've got 2 cruisers as part of the cruiser replacement plan for $62,000 in total, bulletproof vests for $14,000 in total, portable radios, $13,500 in total, cruiser equipment, $8,000 in total. And I just want to make note here too that within the CIP report, it shows the funding sources for these. So the goal would be to, for certain items, to apply for grants, but yeah, putting it in here to mark that 5-year life, $10,000 over threshold policy is what we want to make note here. Fire is next. Turnout gear, $14,884. Fire station study, $30,000. Squad 3 refurbished for $10,000. Parks and Rec, Miller Trail fence, $10,000. Public Works, new plow truck, $50,000. Refurbish of the 2008 plow truck for $15,000. 20-ton trailer for $24,000, which will go into that next item of the excavator for $111,000. Our annual paving contract of $475,000. Streetlight controls, $20,000 each, and we're putting 2 in for $40,000. Guardrails, $10,000. Sidewalk paving, $10,000. Solid waste, forklift for $30,000. Going into town buildings, library heating cooling pumps, $17,200. Repitch roof at the transfer station, $55,000. Generator, PW Garage, $40,000. Generator, Lisbon Falls Fire Station, $15,000. Generator, E.T. Smith Fire Station, $15,000. Boiler, Lisbon Falls Fire Station, $26,780. Electrical work, Lisbon Falls Fire Station for $14,000. Town office admin, this is for the clerk records restoration, $13,750. Assessing revaluation, $30,000. Technology, server for the town office, $19,000. Cruiser laptops for the police department, $32,000. And finally, the wastewater treatment plant, Ford F-250 for $50,000. ISCO 5800 samplers for $15,000. Wemco torque flow pumps for $70,000. Rayco auto dialers for $15,000. And the centrifuge, put that on there for $500,000, looking at RD funding and grants for that one. Final notes, the amounts for CIP for each department coincides with that initial ask of the departments presented the previous week on 3/16/2021. The funding sources, as I touched upon throughout this, of operating budget is a reflection of this. And then there's also funding sources to keep in mind, such as grants, bonds, and things of that nature. Undesignated fund balance also to keep in mind. The difference between the initial budget and the managerial budget represents the change in funding source. And an example here is that undesignated fund balance. Department heads will be discussing these capital needs further in depth tonight as they're on this call. Are there any questions?
What I would ask, you can bring your screen down, Kayla.
Yes, sure.
If any, I submitted general questions associated with the capital improvement. If anybody has any other questions on specifics of the content or anything of that nature, by all means, for the benefit of time, what I would say is that we pick up these individual items within the department budget because they're all going to go before you as they go through. So, you know, when we get into police, we get into fire, public works, we'll tackle them individually. I think it would make best sense because you can see it as it relates because most of them are in their budget or a fund balance allocation as they stand. Does that make sense, Diane and Kayla?
Yes.
I have a general question.
Go, Don.
We had the original combined CIP that was sent last week, and then we got another one today. It says updated. What's the difference?
The difference there's going to be two major things. The technology side of the budget wanted to tie in what was in those footnotes and update the above 5 and 10 year grid sheets. So that way they all agree to each other. So the technology side is going to show that $32,000 for the cruiser laptops for the police department in FY22, along with other items for server and security systems. And then the secondary update was just of note for the Public Works Department. There was a 2004 plow truck slated for replacement for $50,000, and there was another 2008 plow truck for repair for $15,000 in FY22. So just making that distinction in the current fiscal year versus FY23.
Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Alan, may I? So tonight, what you're thinking is basically we'll go through the presentation, and then if there's any questions on either department when it comes to the capital improvement, we'll just take it up the night that department presents. So
Yeah, unless you think there's something tonight, Fern, that actually would be better. So by the time it gets to that department review, it's already fleshed out. So If there's something specifically with it, that's why my comments or questions that I submitted were more just general. What's the nature of this item? Why, what's the life of that asset? Because they can flesh those kind of details out, because as we start working through, the parking lot or the hold list for that later date, these big ticket items is there any potential for some of them being deferred? I'm not assuming that they are, I'm just knowing that that would be why it's actually here for the variety of people that are represented between us, the finance committee and the planning board. They're all tasked with similar functions. So everybody can at least hear that. So, but
I agree. I mean, I think my thought is the capital improvement plan is just that. It's actually a forward-looking plan, but it's not a definite. So a lot of people look at it thinking that's money we're going to spend out. But I do agree that if we go through it tonight and we bring up each department, if there's a concern about a particular item, then we can address it or put it in the parking lot, as you would say. So I'm all good with that.
And I think it's not fair to actually hold the department heads here. The ones that are actually on the screen that aren't being presenting tonight is the fact is just hearing what feedback on the capital improvement in case there was that high level conversation that happens. They can get off the screen because they're going to be going before us during their time anyways. Likewise, you got Alan and Bill, getting them here to be able to hear that. I'd rather have everybody go through their content individually and get them off because they still got to work their individual budgets as well. Everybody cool with that? If that's the case, Alan, you have the floor, my friend.
Good evening, everybody. Like to run down a list of improvements we've been able to do because of the stimulus monies we received this year. Number one, we're able to upgrade our van fleet that we transport our students with. Number two, we installed O2 Prime air cleansing system in all of our schools. We installed outside pavilions for learning and lunches at all of our schools. We have installed thermal cameras at all the entrances of our schools to monitor temperatures of everyone that comes into our buildings. At PWS, we installed new univents and windows. At the high school, we replaced windows and some doors in the 300 wing. Them are some of our accomplishments this year. I have a list of current facilities and transportation needs in the near future. FY 22-23, we are looking to replace 3 school buses. State requirements are 10 years and 125,000 miles in order to qualify for replacement. At this point, we will have 6 buses that will qualify. We have been working on a 3-year cycle. Every 3 years, we've been trying to purchase 3 new. We are looking to replace PWS roof. I currently have 3 bids that we are reviewing right now. I am currently seeking 3 bids to repair the PWS High School and Gartley Street parking lots and drives. I just received a quote on restriping the track. This is recommended between 5 and 7 years, depending on the usage. Our track was completed in 2014. So we are right at the latter end of the recommendation time to get this painted. Number 5, rebuilding the softball dugouts. As you can see, we do not have any dugouts currently. They had blown down in one of the windstorms we had. So we are working on rebuilding those and get those ready for the season. Other known priorities are as follows. Gartley Street, upgrade the kitchen and monitor the roof. LCS, replacing the carpet in the classrooms with tiles. And the roof, mainly the shingles at LCS. That was a 2004 building, so I have my eyes on those. PWS, renovating the locker rooms and replacing the lunchroom tables. LHS, monitoring the health of the oak trees and removing as needed in front of the building. And again, we go back to the roof. That's what I have for you folks tonight. Any questions?
Kayla, is the content of the document that Alan presented on the jump drive? I believe it's very different than the file that you uploaded. Is that the case? And I know why, because Alan and I had a conversation. He called me earlier today. The file that's actually labeled in the CIP folder under school is a presentation that they actually use for budgeting, and it's based on 5-year averages of expenditures and the type of stuff. So the content of what he actually just listed for the actual capital needs, it was a misunderstanding of what the intent of what the capital improvement for that definitions was. So he covered the content of for what is there for the year and the priorities. If you can provide that to Kayla, Alan will gladly upload that to be able to replace it, okay?
Mr. Chair, may I ask the question?
Yes, Fern.
Alan, looks like you had a lot of good stuff that happened this year with the facilities. That's great. It's always nice to get some of that stuff behind us.
Yes, sir.
One question, I wasn't able to look at the plan, and I know it's a question I've had in the past, because we're rebuilding some of the parking lots, just kind of gone away over the years. Is there any monies in the CIP to actually seal the new driveway that we have at the high school gymnasium area? Because I don't think it's been sealed yet since application, right?
You are correct, Vern, and I cannot speak to those funds as right now. I can check into it and let you know.
It just, I know it was recommended initially when I was put together that we try to maintain that parking lot the best we can. So again, I wasn't sure if that was actually put into that potential, redoing of some of the parking lots. Thank you.
Okay.
Fern, in general on that, the last item that on Alan's wish list to be able to accomplish is paving needs in general in that complex. He stopped short of presenting that because since our last meeting where Rick presented the need for the fund balance information, Diane has provided the school department that, so they know they have adequate funding to be able to address the roof. Alan and I had a conversation. It's my understanding that the low bid on this is under the $250,000 threshold and is adequate fund to be able to do that, so it doesn't trigger a referendum and hitting the priorities. As the school department and Alan and Rick flush out the specifics of the rest of their budget, it'll come forward. But for the immediate need right now, as they presented in both of their presentations to us, the priority right now is that Sug Middle School roof. Is that a fair assessment, Alan?
Sir, that's correct.
Any other questions of Alan? If not, we can dismiss him for the night. Seeing none. Have a good one, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Bill, how about you, sir?
I'd like to ask a question. Do you want me to cover, because our calendar year is different, do you want me to cover 2021 or 2022?
Let's, what you would call for the coming budget year. Let's leave it at that.
That'll be on 2021.
Yep.
The department's proposed spending $250,000 to replace, to make improvements in mains, valves, hydrants, and services. For example, the areas that we're looking at are Merrill, Bonafide, and Fillion, I'm sorry, and Fillion Street. Those mains are part of the original system. They're undersized because they have hydrants on them. And Bonafide, we can't get any water, well, we can get domestic water through it, but you can't get any fire flow through it. Additionally, we budget every year, well, we identify 5 hydrants and 5 gate valves. As you may know, that we've had some difficulty with the gate valves over the last several years. With the coming Route 125 reconstruction project, we're going to have to replace some additional valves to assure a shutdown during that project so that we don't hold the contractor up. We have started our automatic meter reading infrastructure project, the end of last year. We've completed around 900 installs. We have around 2,400 services. We hope to have that completed entirely in 2021. We've budgeted some money, $20,000 the following year, just to catch some stragglers and things of that nature. Just to give you some idea on that, you know, reading meters that used to take us 3 days with 3 men have now been reduced to 1.5 hours on a guy driving around in a truck. So that's been great to free up people to do other water work instead of reading meters. $25,000 to replace meters for a 20-year changeout. The department is very behind in changing those meters out. And the new meters that we're using, we've actually been able to pick up additional revenue because of the accuracy of the meters on the low range. We have started construction of our corrosion control project. We've constructed the containment, and we've hung the heat pumps at the Moody plant. We're in the process of stripping out the Bauer station. We're removing 40 to 50 years of equipment and things that haven't been used for years to essentially for the new clean interior. The containment's been constructed. We have all the equipment in-house, and we're doing all this work in-house ourselves with the water department staff. I'm hoping to have this online by the 1st of July. And this is to sequester the hardness in the water that you frequently hear people complaining about the sand in the water, but what that is a calcium carbonate. It comes out of solution when the water is heated in the boilers or the hot water tanks. So water utilities that use this blend, ortho-poly blend. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping the customers will be happy with it as well. We're going to purchase a pavement breaker, hydraulic pavement breaker that we can keep right on the trucks. And the advantage of this equipment is that we'll only have a hydraulic pavement breaker, but in the future, the watering pumps, to be able to do directional pushes across the road, so that for renewable water services rather than open cut roads that are done frequently today. So hopefully to save some of the hot top, we won't be so invasive in the roads. We're planning on spending $8,000 at the Moody plant. This is one of the other improvements that we've made out there. The way the plant was constructed, that plant is designed to operate under pressure, and it's been operating under vacuum conditions, well, except for the last 5 years. But before that, it was being operated under vacuum conditions. So whenever there's a backwash or other events, it's created some water quality issues. I mean, it's nothing that's health related, but just the finished product that goes out. You've heard people talk about the brown water and stuff. That's what the cause of that. So we're actually going to put a manifold system up with a vacuum release valve on it, so that when the plant is shut down and started up or goes into a backwash, they'll constantly be under pressure. We opted to go that way rather than buy a pressure sustaining valve, which is probably $20,000 to $25,000 installed, and you're just burning up electricity, pumping water by a sustaining valve. We're going to replace the 1968 generator at the Bauer station. Can't get parts for it anymore, so it's time to replace it. And we're also going to add a generator here at the office. Due to the frequency of losing power in this end of town, and plus our controls for all the system comes into this office, we have to have a sufficient backup to be able to maintain operations when we lose power. It's a small item, but the Lisbon tank, there's $5,000 this year, we budgeted for that. The aluminum tank cover, there, the seams need to be sealed. The cupola has to be repaired, And I also want to have the company coming in to make sure that when they constructed the aluminum cap, that they put a screen between the cap and the top of the tank so that rodents or anything else can't get in there. I can't see it from the ground, but that's just something that I want to have checked. And if so, I want to have those screens installed. That's a requirement of the drinking water program and the Center for Disease Control. We have to replace, well, the altitude valve at the Lisbon Falls tank has to be replaced. That's pretty much what I have for this year, this coming year.
Anybody have any questions for Bill?
Actually, I do, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And that was just for this upcoming year. Bill, it was a big topic years back, but is the idea of replacing the tanks with a single tank on upland still in the forecasted future? I mean, is that still something working towards, or I wasn't
Yeah.
sure. We hear about some repairs on the other tank, so I wasn't sure if that was still in the
One of
plans.
the, I don't know if you know it, well, anyway, one of the things I've been working to since I've been here is essentially lay out a path forward for the water department for the next 20 years. And in that, one of the things that I thought was lacking was the report of the master plan that was done in 2004 for the water department. I had, and that combined with the ISO work that was done a few years ago, the data that the ISO had was incorrect. I felt that there wasn't enough storage capacity or pumping capacity to provide protection to the community. For example, if the Moody station was to go down, that's the largest source of water in the system. You have to have enough storage to fight a 3,000 gallon a minute fire for 3 hours with your largest facility down. The Ann Street and the Bauer station can't pick up that. So anyway, we received a grant last year, capacity development grant last year, and we had another master plan. I just received the finished document. I sent it out to the commissioners. We're going to have a workshop to talk about what's in it. Actually, I'm going to ask them to approve the document so that this will be a living document moving forward to bring this utility to where it needs to be by current day standards. And they identified in that report that the Upland Road tank is necessary, but we have to maintain the Lisbon tank and the Lisbon Falls tank to have the capacity that we need based on our current pumpage rates. So when you look further out on the water department, CIP is in 2025, we had set some money aside to source a new well. I know the water department's done a lot of work in the past, but I think it's extremely necessary to find another source of supply to be able to provide that protection for the community. I hope that answered your question.
I have one, I'm sorry, Fern, just to clarify, did you say this is a change from adding one tank to replace two to keeping all three?
Right.
Wow, that's a lot of, yeah, okay.
The study that was done, the ISO information was incorrect. For example, they had the capacity of the Lisbon, I'm trying to remember. They had the capacity to live in Lisbon Falls tank at, I think it was like 100,000 gallons, something like that. I think that was the hopes of the water department. But you to operate a system on one tank, that would have to be an extremely large tank up there, and then you're putting all your eggs in one basket. So if a water main should fail up there and you lose the tank, then you've lost your firefighting capacity.
I just remember back when the planning board was addressing the Upland Road potential for a tank on that piece of property. All the documentation was saying how bad the other two tanks were, particularly the Lisbon tank, and that they needed to be repainted and refurbished and yada,
Oh.
yada, yada. It's
I'm gonna
expensive.
argue that point. The Lisbon tank, it's a riveted steel tank. They do have finite life. I mean, there'll be a time, but as far as getting rid of that tank, I don't think it's gonna happen. I think if ever something has to happen, it'll have to be replaced.
And Bill, thank you. I mean, my intention there was not to bring anything like that up front, but more to same thing the town's having for issues. I mean, not only are we actually trying to keep our infrastructure that's falling apart going, we just have a lot of other big projects on the horizon that we're going to bring forward. So as
Right.
time moves forward, there's no end to this. It's just basically trying to figure out how you manage money to make it work, right? I mean, it's
Right.
always an ongoing repair and improvement. That's all.
Right, and that's, you know, that's absolutely the challenge for it. And the thing of it is when I look at the water department and what, you know, what needs to be done or what should be done, there's a lot of improvements that should be done. And it's to meet the current firefighting standards, current water quality standards. I've got a couple of line items for one in 2024 and another one is, anyway, what I have proposed is to give you an example. The community has grown up in elevation around the town, and the existing tanks don't get, you got to turn over a certain quantity of water in the wintertime to prevent it from freezing. In the summertime, you have to turn over more water to maintain your water quality in the tank. And what happens is the water stratifies in the fall, winter time, and in the spring, summertime. What happens, you have, like, in the fall, winter, you have your warm water on top of the tank, and then as it cools down, just like the lakes do, water flips. And the water at the top of the tank, if you don't get enough turnover, that's when you start getting taste and odor complaints. And what we proposed to do, and this has been identified in the master plan, is put in a mixing system, which is happening more and more frequently throughout the water utility industry, so that you're continually getting a changeover in the tank to maintain that water quality. If you don't, typically what you'll have is bacteriological hit.
Any other questions of Bill? Always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Oh, welcome.
Any other questions on the topic of the capital improvement plan in general? If there are any, for the benefit of the department heads that don't need to be here, that aren't presenting tonight, and the planning board members,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I've got a couple. One, I think the job's been done is well done to the point, but it's a couple things I think are missing. For the future, I think it would be good to include highways, roads like Pine Ridge Road that'll be rebuilt. Bond issues can be in place and we're not aware of until it comes up. I think we should include things like roads, major culverts, bridges, anything like that. I don't see any of that. I think it should be done. I'm sure there must be something in the next 5 to 10 years planned. The other thing was the park trail system has been so popular that the parking lots, the one at Miller Park is full all the time, it seems. And it's gotten to a point where it may be a safety hazard. There certainly needs to be some planning as to expanding that parking or diverting parking to another location. On the other end of the trail in Lisbon Falls is no parking there. Should be something there. Currently, they're parking the road. It's a safety hazard that's going to get worse. I mean, that's the trouble with success. You get a need for a solution. Thank you.
Absolutely. To that point on the parking in the Lisbon Falls side, Kurt, the parking's there. It's just the fact that we need to develop the fact that it's at the park and ride as designated. The fact is, we need to develop that to actually encourage people to actually park there versus where they're currently parked. I
I
don't,
don't think anyone will drive that walk all the way from the park and ride to the, where the trail starts. It's like half a mile. It's way too far.
That's why the sidewalk is laid out along there. It's supposed to be part of the trail, as you know. I believe
Nobody
we're
uses it.
also, I believe we're also planning to add the parking behind Rusty's Lantern as well. That's a little bit closer.
Well,
Okay, I
it's a
think part
problem.
of this is actually
Good
just.
point. It's a point, Kurt. I don't want to actually take away from what you're saying. It's just the intention, because it was a paving plan with one of our former PW directors to actually try to encourage people that there is the rest of that trail for the benefit of the parking. But you're right, creatures of habit say they're going to park right there at the end of the Blethyn Street, and that isn't the place to be. Vern, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, not at all. I apologize for that. One of the things I think that Brett is working on is signage, proper signage. I mean, there is adequate parking, be it throughout the trail. I think just a lot of people don't understand where it is. I mean, during the summer, you can park hundreds of cars at the school up in Lisbon, right on the edge of the trail, and out behind the where ETTI is out back there. I know there's been some work for the parking lot there. So, I mean, I think I do agree. I mean, it's your point, the idea that it's well used, I think is a great thing because it is very well used. And I think we just as a community need to work on our signage, which we are, to direct people in the correct locations if one place is overloaded for sure. But your point to being well used, I think is a good one because it is very well used.
Any
Mr. Chair,
other-
Thank you.
Yes, please.
yeah, it's a good problem to have, to your point, Kurt. I mean, it's a good problem for us to have. I think that what Fern said is going to happen. And I think the more that Brett looks at access points like the parking lot behind ETTI, and more importantly, I think there's an opportunity that we haven't seized upon that the folks who use the trail have, and they've created their own path coming off of the walk right by the high school track. There's a walk up right in there. And so there's access to lots of parking. So to Fern's point, so I think that if we decide to formalize that as an access point, that could just be one more place where people can access in a large groups. So
And
all
then
good problems to have.
understand from both Alan and Rick is the fact that the schools they're on board with this. The fact is because they solicited me as looking for an Eagle Scout mentor to be able to make it an Eagle project, to be able to do that. It was easier to be able to address it at ETTI, to be able to put that, but there is that spot for parking, to your point, that actually is on the path versus down Blethyn Street. But there's opportunities there for sure. Any other high-level observations associated with it? I think the roads one, Kurt, that's spot on because that's always been a blind spot because the evolution of the CIP locally, it's been a very good placeholder for equipment, but the buildings and the other infrastructure projects have been lacking. So staff are developing them to be able to keep them on there. And you just put Randy on notice, and I'm sure he'll actually take notes and actually come back with more for us for next year for sure. Anything else? If not, then the department heads and planning board members, if you don't wish to stay for the rest, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Bill. And we'll move on to the divisions or orgs for those that are here for tonight. Taylor or Diane, whoever is going to be running the show,
Bill, do you want to bring the budget up and we'll start with the elected officials?
Those guys are bums.
Yeah. Crooked is the word I heard.
Al, do you mind if we go to assessing so we can let Kathy go?
Yeah, no, by all means, Kathy's busy. Well, technically, no, I'm not comfortable letting you go, period. So I'm glad that you're actually doing us a huge favor, Kathy. So let's leave it at that.
So we're gonna go down to assessing first.
Yes, please.
While Kayla's getting set up on that, the fact that for the benefit of the planning board, if you are not planning board, the finance committee, this department is being proposed to be reorganized because Kathy has stated her intention to retire, and is that March? You agreed to stay to June, right?
Yes, June 4th.
Yeah, so she has a date. So the fact is, but what she has offered is a proposal to be able to put us back to what we had before and help us through that transition. So having set the stage, whoever wants to run the lead here.
All right, so here we are. I guess we'll just start right ahead. First line is department head. If anyone has any questions about, as Alan just mentioned, the reorganization of this department, Kathy would like to speak to it.
Yeah, I propose this year that we go with a full-time assessing clerk or assistant and have a assessor on a contracted basis 1 day a week. We had this, what, 5-6 years ago, and that would have worked really well. But the contract they had with the assessor, it didn't have him come in an X number of days. Usually you have them in X number of days a week or a month, and it's a fixed day, and you can count on them being there. And the contract we had before, it was you just never knew when he was going to show up, and it was very frustrating for the public. But right now, we're in a good spot to try it. And I would only propose this because of Amy Wires in the assessing office. She's a really good employee. She's got a good attitude. She's really good with the public, and she likes assessing, and she wants to learn. So this is a good, if we're going to try this, now is the time to do it. And I think it's a good fit for Lisbon.
Kayla? Can you bring up on the screen FY21's budget to FY22 so they can see the changes?
See the comparison? Sure, hold on. I'm gonna stop my share.
Because for the benefit of everybody present that has maybe hadn't a chance to look at it, that this is one of the departments that actually has a budget savings in the proposal that Kathy's actually recommending. And you can see it line by line when you're looking at it that way.
That's 28,000. That's the
Yep.
line you're looking at?
The total, the
Yeah.
total for the division, the way I would look at it, Don. But
Yeah,
So
28,800.
Oh, sorry.
good.
For assessing, that's a $28,840 decrease from the FY21 budget.
Anybody have any questions specifically associated with what's being proposed? I know from the council's perspective, when we first were made aware of this through Diane, there was a lot of concern associated with the plan. Most of that has been alleviated from what I understand at this point, is that we feel very comfortable that if Kathy can help us get through this, to be able to digest it, to be able to make it successful, I'm on board. And it's mostly because of what she actually brings to be able to consider it as a viable option, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, Vern.
Yeah, I think definitely I'm interested to see how this works, and we have the right people on board to make it happen if it will happen. Just one question. Earlier, I think I seen on the capital improvement plan was a $20,000 piece for a reassessment. Did I see that, or was it not on? I thought I had seen that somewhere along the line. Now, would that be done by the same people we contract to come in with, or is that actually thinking that would be a separate entity to do the
It can
reassessment?
be whoever you want it to be with. You probably got another 10 good years at least before you have, I would say, before you have to think about doing a revaluation. But it's good to start putting some aside because I think what the last one was, what, 350,000? So,
So that place mark is actually just what we're thinking about putting away money every year, kind of like we did on
Yes.
the capital plan for the fire department. So eventually, when we have it, we will not have to go out to bond for the reassessment. Is that what you're? So it isn't
Yes.
something that we don't need a reassessment in the next year or so to bring us. to
no,
100%.
absolutely not. I think probably good for another 10 years or so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Don.
I have previous experience in a town that had this very situation where the assessor, although it was a company, the assessor came in once a week and talked to anybody, made appointments. The person that was working there made appointments for them to talk, and it seemed to work very well. And it was a town that had a big summer influence of, influx of people, so it still worked very well.
It can if you have the right people, and without Amy, I wouldn't have recommended this.
The one thing that I had, Kathy, that it's the last item, that the microfilming is the fact is that going to be still a reasonable request with not somebody in your capacity, or would she still be able to get to that part?
Is that the 2,000 for the mapping?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do the splits on paper, but we need, Lisbon tax maps are in really good shape, and we want to keep them. It's really important to keep the inventory of all of the parcels. And that is something you have to send out to a mapping company to do. And there's really no getting around that.
No, I just looking at, obviously COVID was an odd year because the fact is getting to specific things, we were hitting the priorities and not seeing that we were able to do that, and just making sure that I agree, it needs to be done. So you did a great job answering that for the listening public. It's just, is it something that's reasonable if we're making this switch? And you've answered my question. Thank you. Anything else of Kathy, guys, on her division? Hearing none. Well, Kathy, thank you for your time tonight.
Okay, thank you.
And we will proceed right to the top of the list.
So we are gonna look at elected officials.
Yep. And before we proceed too much further, I did not hear anything in that. If anybody on the council or finance committee wants to weigh in that they want to put that off for a final decision, I would give you that option. But if I'm not hearing it, I'm not entertaining it after this point. Assessing just got passed at what you see presented. So if anybody wants to, let's speak to that, because that would be the approach that I would put to this as we move through these divisions.
Okay, we have the elected officials budget. That's pretty much the same except for one line item called employee recognition. For the past couple of summers, we've done employee recognition out at Beaver Park. And it was mentioned by a couple of counselors to maybe do something different this coming year. And I just put a placeholder of 5,000 in there. We may want to do something out there and have it catered. I have no idea what that would cost, but right now that's just a placeholder. If council wants to entertain doing something different than what we've done in the past.
Anybody, you're seeing, it is a goal that we actually asked for, Diane, so you're seeing the placement associated with that. Now that you're seeing the hit to the budget or that, would be the wish of the council?
I would, I think that it's probably more than enough money, but I'm not bearing in mind that we don't know what exact cost would be or exactly what we're going to do. It's a good placeholder just in case.
Okay.
I would chime in and say that I'm a strong proponent of an employee recognition day of some type. That said, I'm thinking about what we've done the last couple of years, And I'm just going off of what I think the number was. And do we feel that number reflects what the expense was that we've had? Do we feel that that's a
This
little
is more
strong?
than what we've expended. This,
Yeah.
I only put that in there because there was some other thoughts going around.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to hear that, Diane. I wanted to hear that we're looking at what it is and trying. I know what we've done was basically has been on a sort of a shoestring budget to try to get this thing kicked off. So now I think if we're thinking about it, I just wanted to hear that that was why that budget is as a place marker supporting some other ideas.
Vern, I heard you.
Chair, may I?
Yep.
The, I think one thing the council needs to recognize, and one of the recommendations came from myself with Diane, because we've been pretty active in the last couple of years putting this on, along with other folks also, is as we've seen in the last couple of years, it only takes one person to fall away and the thing not to happen. So I think if we are going to present this and we're going to do it in a quality manner to the point where it actually has meaning and bearing, that we need to actually come up with a plan that's actually kind of foolproof and not depending on just one person or two people to make it happen. We actually had some pretty good hurdles last year that it wasn't up to 10 minutes before everybody was showing up that we didn't know if it was going to happen or not. So I don't think this is an unreasonable amount of money for, if you look at the amount of employees we have and should I say, the amount of our total budget for what we're actually trying to do. But I would offer anybody that actually wants to remove it to come up with a better plan and present it.
Mr. Chair?
Norm?
So to that point, I just think that I don't think anybody wants to remove it so much as we want to make sure that that there's going to be buy-in. The whole idea behind anything is that we're seeing the employee buy-in to it and that they understand that we're celebrating them at the same time. If we're seeing that first year was great, we had a nice turnout. And so if we're seeing that number continue to increase, I mean, we're 100% participation is very, very seldom in any organization, but if we're seeing a participation level that is there and supports it, then I'm all in favor of the increase in the over what we've done over the last couple of years in the budget, because I feel that it's warranted. We can't appreciate them enough. So that's why I say I think we find something that works. Why not continue to, especially if they're buying in and they're enjoying it? I think that's what it's about. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Diane, hearing a lot of discussion on this one, just for the benefit of a lot of other discussions that are going to come after it. Can we just put that item on the parking lot for future discussion? I mean, because it is one of our goals and it is something we've asked. So you've done what we've actually looked for, because I see limited issue associated with that, because anything that isn't spent, we can encumber it and carry it forward for future years. So the amount wouldn't be but the one time. But the thing that's in the back of my mind, and you know it firsthand as well too, is that there will be the naysayer that actually comes at you with the fact that you're spending tax money to actually reward employees, and that will be viewed in a negative light. But let's move forward. Next division, if there's nothing else.
Next one, need town manager.
I just also want to say, as we go through the budgets, in most cases, you're going to see a reduction in the health insurance and also in the workers' comp. Health insurance for this coming calendar year that begins in July, there was a 0% increase set by the Health Trust. Last year, we budgeted a 9% increase for the second half of the year, not knowing what it was going to be. So that put us in a good position so that we could reduce this upcoming budget. The other big factor is that the workers' comp, we have a really high experience mod now, but we have a really bad year that's going to drop off starting January of 2022. So the insurance company did a quick review of our experience mod, and it's going to drop down to 0.89, which is roughly $100,000 savings in premium. So we did go back through and readjust the workers' comp. So in most cases, you're going to see a decrease in that. So thankfully, we've got a bad year that's dropping off. So in this budget here, the big increase is going to be the administrative assistant. What I am recommending or proposing to the council is to put her in as the HR director. Currently, I hold that title. She's doing a lot of the work now, but I would like to put a lot more responsibility on to her. She's also my administrative assistant, and she's also my deputy tax collector and deputy treasurer. So she's responsible for the tax liens and the sewer liens and doing all the foreclosures, in addition to all her other responsibilities. So with this change, it's also going to go, she'll be going from an hourly position to a salaried position. And that's part of the reason of the increase as well, is to compensate her for all the additional hours that she'll be working where she wouldn't qualify for overtime or comp time. That's what happens when you go to hourly to salary. And the duties that she would be taking on, she would include independent judgment and the management of all of the HR operations, including recruitment, selection, orientation, training, coaching, counseling, planning, monitoring, and appraising the staff. And she will also support the other management team by providing HR advice. And she would be developing and writing and updating policies, procedures, and job descriptions, and be a part of the labor compliance and also labor relations, which I've had her involved in lately. We've had a lot of different things going on, and she's sitting in on all of those. So that's the major increase in this budget. And we also increased the professional development. We had cut that by $500 last year, and I'm proposing to add that back in this year.
And I'm assuming your response to my question is that our person would actually need specific classes that you've earmarked that she would be getting with that
Yes.
additional funding.
Absolutely, yes.
And the last one that caught my attention on this was the audit services. This is the amount that actually is contracted for the coming year for R.H.R. Smith, and next year we would have to go out to bid for another 5-year term or whatever, correct?
Well, this is actually, I think, the 6th year, and I contacted R.H.R. Smith and asked them what they would, if we continued on with them, and they said they would hold the pricing. This is the same price we've had for the last 5 years.
Right.
And we could have gone out to bid, but because we're still in the transition of the migration and the different softwares, it would just be very, very difficult to have a different auditing firm do the audit. I think if we do one more year with them and then go out to bid.
It would not be my recommendation to go out to bid. That isn't what I was referring to. I just want to make sure that it was actually consistent, that this is tied to their pricing and we didn't have to. So
Right.
I am completely comfortable with that, especially if they did us the solid to be able to keep the pricing the same, because it's a price that has been the same for the last 5 years. Knowing everything that they've got, I can expect that that figure would be higher to be able to go out with anybody else to get the bid. I will be the one that will say, I've heard the proposal associated with the potential reclass. I have no issue associated with that. Anybody else on the council want to weigh in on the topic?
I just want to say, Mr. Chair, I just want to say, I think it's justified.
Anybody feel that this actually ought to be something that actually gets held to a later point for more discussion? We've done that in past with positions or anything that's changed in that, to be able to hear the entire budget, to be able to weigh in at that time too.
Can I speak?
Yep.
Yes, so that was actually one of the things I was thinking, was all personnel, to be able to look at total FTE changes comprehensively would be helpful, I think, rather than by department at this point.
Okay, so Diane,
Mm-hmm.
this, where it being a change, could we put that on that list?
Okay,
On that, on that, as a clarification question, we have 12 positions that we cut. I'm sorry, it's not 12, that's Lewiston, I believe. What was the number that we cut last year that are in this budget?
let me see here. I believe it was 2, I'll have to go back and look. 2, and then there was a part of the rec department's administrative assistant.
Yeah, I mean, because
To
I
go
know
back to that other sheet.
it impacted PW, police, and recreation specifically.
Right.
What I would ask when you go through this, you and Kayla, if you could highlight that, I'm okay with addressing them at a later time because they are going to be flagged as FTEs, but realize that they were redlined last year with the intention of putting them back in the budget.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, may I?
Yes, Fern.
And yeah, I mean, I definitely think that this is, when it comes to HR, we've always been lagging a little bit behind, sometimes having the right people in the right places, and maybe we're there now. But the question, I guess, is Diane had mentioned the idea that part of the salary change was the difference in potential overtime. Do we actually have, I can't see it on the screen here and I couldn't bring it up before. Do we actually, in the last couple of years, has there been a significant amount of overtime that's actually been charged out? Or is it basically due to the differences in the duties that would actually bring upon those overtimes, or?
No, this particular employee has not been paid overtime and she chooses to take comp time instead. And she has worked quite a few hours. So
Okay,
she
so I
chooses
mean,
to take the time off rather than get paid for it. So that's why I've never budgeted it for her.
Okay,
just one of those things when you start looking at the idea of trying to balance off the idea of overtime versus going to salary and not have the overtime, it would have been better if it showed. It just would have been an easier point to see, but that's not a big factor. The moving forward with the new position, being a salary person, is that just going to go away, the idea of trading off for comp time, or is that, is that something that you typically can do with a salary employee also? I guess
No,
I just want to make sure that she's not working and not getting paid.
Right.
Getting paid.
No, that's why you have to compensate her as a salary. It should be no different than any other salaried department head.
Fern? First thing that's going to happen associated with that is that anything that she has for comp time on the books has to actually be paid to her. My question would be is, when would that happen, Diane? Would that be in FY 21 or would that be in FY 22? Because if it's not in FY 22, that needs to be adjusted in this.
Right.
budget.
It would be, we would do it in FY 21 and I would hopefully she would take the time off so that we wouldn't have to pay her.
Okay, but don't force the issue because it is,
No, I won't. No. And if,
it's clearly a wage that's entitled to her that you cannot,
right,
you cannot have that. It needs to be paid out.
right.
The other piece is, Kayla, on your screen, if you go to the second tab, do you have the overtime FY 20 for Fern's question on that piece?
Yeah, let me grab that. That's on a separate sheet here.
Not in there.
Yeah, see, I didn't remember if it was either, Don. Looks like it might have been blanked out, but to Diane's point, she either didn't have any last year, Fern, or the fact is it may have been blanked out given the nature of the way the budget was built this year. But hearing the explanation, I think a better way to actually say not in lieu of overtime that she wouldn't get, it's more the fact that by putting somebody with the title clearly HR director, you are able to make that classification from IRS standards for exemption. The title that she currently has does not have enough teeth in it to make that position exempt, if you will. So, but usually with that responsibility, does come an increase in that pay for what the expectation of an HR manager or director would be.
And one other question is, being HR in town, I know there's an odd relationship between the water department and the town, you know. It's kind of like separate but together. Now, does the HR also carry over to the water department staff too, or is it just basically, I guess, I wasn't sure if that's just limited to the town or not. I mean, I know there's an odd mix there as far as for, you know, how the employees go.
Well, we do their payroll. It's half and half probably, Fern. The water department does a lot of their own, like they do their onboarding of their own employees. But anytime we have any type of training, they're included, and we actually do their payroll.
I guess that's just kind of an unknown at this point. I mean, there is probably a need for that through the water department. I just wasn't sure how that actually played out. So just curious.
Workers' compensation and all of it. It's the fact is that they're not fully released into the wild under their own animal. That there's still that relationship. So there is some of that in this position as well too, I guess.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, that's on.
The one thing I was thinking in the other method that we can accomplish something is the town manager has significant goals to accomplish over the next year and 2 years. And all of those goals are going to be hard to achieve. And this could be a step in helping alleviate some of the problem and make it easier to achieve.
You were picking up the vibe that I am putting down, because Diane didn't come up with this in a vacuum. Is what can we take off the town manager to make some of the goals that we're trying to work with her on to be able to do that. And one of them that came to right to the top was HR, because of the nature of some of the dialogues that we've had of recent. And if we can get somebody in a more solid foundation to be able to do that, it doesn't always have to be elevated to Diane. Any other things before we move out of town manager? Hearing none, let's go to the next division then.
The next one is going to be insurance.
Diane, are these the rates for what are they estimates for the coming year, or are they known yet?
No, they're estimates. I don't know yet. They're working on it. And I always, at this point in time, I build in 5%. The only one that's known is the critical incident insurance. But everything else, from general liability all the way down to the public officials bond, is not known yet. And I will get that hopefully by May for you. But right now there's a 5% increase built in. And then the HRA I've left the same for right now. The reason why we haven't spent so much yet this year is all COVID related. Nobody went to the hospital. Nobody went to the doctors during this past year. We're seeing it in claims on the health trust level, which is a big reason why we had a 0% increase. I'm starting to see now, because I get the reports weekly, I'm starting to see an uptick in people going back to the doctors again. So we're using more of the HRA costs. I do still have, I think it's 17,000, right, Kayla, in a carry forward. And that's mainly as a buffer in case this 23,000 wasn't enough, then we could fall back on it. But as we move out of COVID, I think you're going to see people use the, go back to their doctors again. Therefore, we'll have the shared costs of the HRA.
Diane, for the clarification question on the 17 grand, are you saying because the previous year we had budgeted higher, you encumbered it, so you have that in that account? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, and because COVID kicked in last year before year end, we had a period of time where people weren't going to the doctors, so we had money left over. Therefore, I reduced the budget this year because of that, and which was a good thing to do. But I still have that 17,000 and as a buffer. And I think what we should do this year as well is whatever's left over at year end, carry that forward into that same account. And then moving forward, we may not have to raise so much through taxation. I think this past year with COVID, it's going to allow us to do that a little bit.
Kayla, can you show me FY 21's actual for the total division?
FY21 actual.
Yep,
Yes, hold on.
in total. Because my next question is to Mark. Mark, are you actually of the mindset of anything like we did at the county, where we actually take a $10,000 amount off this entire division and let them place where it actually lands? You're on mute, Mark. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure.
No, that's why I was saying, because I know it's how we've landed is
Mhm.
let Diane pick the groceries, but
Mhm.
hopefully with this 10 grand to squeak out of this one without minimal impact to the budget.
Mhm.
So the FY21 actual, these numbers are based off of March 1st. So as Diane was
I
mentioning,
meant 20. I'm sorry. Go to the 20.
20.
Yep. And yeah.
Chair, if this budget is kind of a moving target, I don't think it would lock us tonight anyways. I think we'd actually kind of wait to see if we get some more definite numbers, right, before we make any decisions.
Well, you know, if we funded this fully to the way we offer the HRA, we should be funding this at around 40 to 42,000.
Yeah, but
So is column E what we spent in fiscal year 20, Kayla?
Yes, it is.
So there's a normal year, a non-COVID year, and we spent 36,000.
then we have to replenish the 36,000.
Yeah, so
what-
I just don't feel comfortable at this point to reduce it that much.
And last year's actually, we spent 120 and your budget in 114. At best, let's look at insurance and hold the division for a later discussion, Diane. to get
Okay.
Better information, because I agree with Mark. The fact is, we've done it because clearly what we were seeing at the county level, the fact is they built in like a 10% every year and they weren't even hitting last year's actual. So taking $10,000 didn't have any impact because there were no way they were going to hit that actual, but you're already over it for last year. Thank you, Kayla. Is there anything in insurance on that? There's not a lot of stuff there because it's not the health insurance, it's all the other crap. Hearing none, let's move to the next division then.
Next is technology. And in here, you'll see the changes in that column based on the 3/16/2021 council meeting of the contracted services.
So that's a 57,743 reduction from when we first proposed the budget for you. I left the minor equipment and the R&M equipment the same, and the internet and web hosting. I've still got money in the R&M equipment and minor equipment. I'm waiting for Burgess Technology to come on site and do their assessment of what we need. I do need to upgrade some more computers, but I want to wait to see what they come up with. I don't recommend us reducing those because we're still behind in upgrading our computers. And this year I spent quite a bit on, because of COVID, on laptops for the department heads. But now I've got to go back and start working on the actual desktops.
I don't disagree with the approach. Primarily, we got a new person coming through that's actually going to be making their assessment. If they're seeing it slightly different from that, you've at least given them the tools to be able to make that assessment and have some funds to be able to get some of the changes made. June 1st would be when Burgess potentially would be coming on.
No, I think they're going to come on beforehand and do that assessment before they take over.
Okay, but officially from,
Oh, no, actually, the
There's the
current
5 year-
contract runs out on May 20th.
okay,
So they'll be on board in May and probably a little bit sooner than that, sometime maybe towards the end of April. We're working out the contract details right now.
but there will be, as roundtable lapses, Burgess will be coming on, so the
Mhm.
impact to this year's budget should be minimal at best. Is that fair?
Right, yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
yes,
So one thing I wanted to, as we looked, as I looked this over and I wanted to bring up tonight, and it can certainly be part of the parking lot. Diane, I'm glad to hear that Burgess is going to come on and make that assessment sooner rather than later. That's encouraging news. One thing that I know that we need to make part of this fresh start with Burgess is asking as part of their assessment of our equipment and current network, also to ask them to help us implement a disaster recovery protocol.
Yep.
In the event that this facility was no longer accessible and no longer safe to work in, how could all of the basic functions that needed to happen remotely for staff? So I think this is a great reset opportunity for the ground up to have that disaster recovery protocol started with this firm and have them make those assessments now. So when looking at our equipment, they're thinking about that bigger picture as well.
And also as part of this budget on the capital improvement plan, we have 19,000 set aside for the town office server. That was put in place in 2014. It's running Windows 2008, so that really needs to get upgraded. Whether that 19,000 is an accurate figure, I don't know until Burgess comes in. And then the other part of it is the laptops for the cruisers, which is in the technology budget as well. Not in this budget, but it's in the CIP to be funded through another source. And I think Chief McGee is still on, and he can address that if you have any questions.
Thank you, Dan.
Chief, she mic'd you up pretty good, so why don't you just give an overview of what that actually is and the dates on the replacement for the cruisers for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Ryan McGee here. The cruiser laptops slash PCs, they're not your typical laptop. They're a ruggedized computer and they're highly secured. They're from 2012 to 2013 timeframe. We've also had two major window failures on those. They're an old operating system, as you can imagine, being from 2012 and 2013. The recommendation from our IT person, it was not the person, it's not Roundtable, it's the police department's person that we have part-time take care of our internal computer systems that are police related. So highly suggest that they get replaced. They really should be the new Windows 10 platform. And just to add to this, originally we had the WatchGuard cameras on this line item, which I have moved up a couple of years. And just to explain the reasoning behind that is, I mentioned in a previous meeting to Mr. Albert about body worn cameras, legislature coming down, and that should be in the next few years. Mandating body worn cameras. The WatchGuard cruiser cameras are part of that. And I bring that up because the WatchGuard cameras were slated because of the age of them to start to be replaced this year. After speaking to WatchGuard on it, we can get a few more years out of them. And, we just had them updated this past year and had some new body packs put on, audio packs. So I think it's more prudent and cost effective to take that money, put it towards updating the patrol PC computers, which are outdated. And those computers are what we receive a majority of our complaints on. Anybody that has a scanner out there, you're not hearing all the complaints the officers are getting. Majority of the complaints actually sent to a computer screen. So there's that. And then there's on top of that, there's the security part of it. You can only imagine the most highly secured data goes back and forth between these computers. Everything you can possibly imagine in the criminal justice world, we can access that goes back and forth. So they're an old platform. They're due to be replaced, and that's why I've moved the WatchGuard cameras up a few years and put this on that line item to be replaced.
The one question I had on this, Diane, I think you answered it. The software and services, the 195, 427. Kayla, can you bring up that checklist in your PDF?
Which PDF? The
Go to the technology PDF and find the schedule that makes up that 195.
Oh, I don't think she has that. I've got that.
Okay. But that
So-
195, 427 includes Burgess actually doing the backup and cuts the
It
ties
does.
roundtable, right?
Yes, you want me to just run down what some of these
Yeah.
items are?
Just give them a highlight of what the 195 equals.
Yeah, so it's the town's full service support, which is the Burgess contract. It also is I also included in that per diem services for when they do computer work for us on site. I just put a $5,000 placeholder in there until I know, I don't know what that's gonna be because we have to pay $140 an hour. It also includes the backup, which is $9,000, spam filtering for $59.28. We also have the emergency reporting for the fire department, $19,318. And then we have some smaller amounts, which is the PD recording Acorn software, PD recording First Light, miscellaneous police department. We have the Adobe Teams. This includes Harris, what we still have in Trio, the software we're using, which includes the assessing and the motor vehicle, which is a $17,257 price tag. This includes Munis and an additional $3,000 this year for training. Now that we've had Munis for about a year, some of my staff has asked me to budget some additional training now that they've used the software. They want to be able to use it to its potential. And Twyla's on, she can explain, if you need any further on that, because she's one of the ones that would like to have some additional training. And it also includes the Mills Library, Town Hall Streams, Zoom, Clerkbase, the Clerkbase Onboard, Clerkbase Archive Minutes, Civic Plus, which is for the rec department to do the online registrations. And this also includes our copier maintenance agreements. So that's what makes up the 195,577. So it's a bunch of different things.
195, 427. You said-
I know I added something to it today, but we still have enough in there.
All right, all right. Anything on this division? I know we took care of a lot of this last week when we talked about moving forward with Burgess. And you're seeing the adjustments actually been made that are in that column that Kayla added. So you're seeing the 57,008 that was actually cut out of this budget. That's the first that we've done. Hearing none, let's move to the next division then.
Next one is going to be abatements.
Abatements is a placeholder right now. I've got a question out to legal about the overlay, and until I get that answered, I decided I would just put it in the budget. And so I want to, we'll put that on the list because I'm thinking that will be able to come out.
Okay. And we had, for the listening public, if I remember correctly, it's 36 grand we expended it in abatements last year. I looked at that figure to see where that landed. Can you confirm that, Kayla?
Abatements for 2020 is at 61,800.
much higher. I was.
Yeah, and the biggest portion of that was the Barwell Mill. There
Okay.
was a big abatement that we had to do for them.
Okay. Yes, so no other action. Let's park that and hopefully you'll be able to get your answer on that. And that'll be 10 grand that can come off this. Next, Kayla?
Okay, so this is gonna be a good segue. I'm gonna move back up to legal.
I'm proposing no change as of right now to the legal. We've been doing a lot of work with legal, especially contractual work right now, and union and mediation and arbitration, and a lot of other items.
That might have been the 36,000 that we spent last year because it was tracking right around the 40. So I'm comfortable with that number.
And we do have money that we carried forward. So we do have some money in another line that I haven't touched yet, but I may have to before the year is out.
Okay. So how much is in that other line?
Is that 18,000? Yeah.
Can we park this one for a future
We
discussion?
sure can. Yep.
If that's the case, then that may be something that has no impact on the budget. If we can use that funds and still get 40 grand without raising an additional 40.
Yep.
Let's park that. Next, Kayla, if there's no other discussion.
The next few are gonna be from me, finance. So finance, went too far. Not a whole lot of changes here in finance. There's a change in the insurance, which is just due to a plan change. And then we have reduced some of our mileage and because of professional development being on Zoom platforms now. We're not traveling to conventions and things like that. So the mileage and travel reimbursement is going to be a reduction here. And the postage also was reduced just by looking at actuals for the past couple of years. That one was reduced based on those averages. But other than that, not too much. It's an overall $6,199 increase.
Kayla, why don't you, for the benefit of the finance committee, and explain how some of this budget's built for insurance with either vacancies or the switches, to highlight where the bulk of this change comes from? Because you're going to see that through bigger departments, you're going to see pretty sizable swings for vacancies.
Certainly. So when we have a vacant position, and like you'll see for my next one for tax collection, when we have that vacant position that we're intending to fill immediately, for such items for benefits, we're not sure what the new employee coming in is going to choose for benefits. So we budget it at the maximum amount within that range for each of these benefits. And that's why there's certain increases to such things as health insurance, or state retirement, things like that, just because it will be adjusted once we know what the person coming in would be.
And in this case here, this is an actual employee. This is the true benefit, not a vacancy, correct? In this division?
In this division, this is a health insurance adjustment just based on plan change.
Right, for an actual employee, not a vacancy.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Anything for finance on that division that anybody's seeing? Why don't you move on to tax then, Kayla?
Okay, so tax collection, this is going to coincide with the beginning. We talked about assessing. So there's going to be a little bit of a reorganization on the tax collection side. We had split the assessing and tax collection part-time each. And with that position moving to full-time assessing, we no longer have that part-time position on the tax collection side. So we're seeing an overall reduction of about 1,336 for this department, just based largely on that reorganization and personnel within this department. Other deductions of note are the professional development. Again, a lot of these platforms for trainings are going to be on Zoom, which are going to reduce our travel, and it's going to reduce the cost for these Zoom trainings. And a lot of the trainings that the state offers aren't going to be at cost. So we've reduced that line item as well. And as I just noted above, because we also had a vacancy in FY21 for tax collection that we will be filling full-time. That's where you're going to see that health insurance increase, because we're going to have a new employee coming in on the tax collection side within FY21, and we're not sure what that health insurance is going to look like for that person. So we're budgeting on that higher end of that range.
Will that person actually take over before this budget is finalized?
Yes, we have already conducted interviews, and we are hoping to have that person start immediately.
Can I ask Diane that we actually flag this one for a future discussion? If there is a savings, then we just take that in.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yep.
How many non-supervisory employees are there in this department? And what are their titles?
Kayla, why don't the best way to show him that? Can you show him the salary by position? I think that'd be the best way to give it to him.
Is that payroll Excel?
Yep.
Can everyone see that all right?
Nothing came up, Kayla.
Yeah, so for tax collection, there are position descriptions there, and that is going to be, when we take out that part-time employee, it's going to be 3 full-time employees up there.
And can you tell me how many of those employees are covered under main PERS and what the rate is?
I think they all are, and the rate is 10%. It's in my budget explanations.
It's close enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
It is 10%, Kurt, because it was 10.5 last year and they reduced it because we're finally getting caught up.
Gone up a lot.
Well, there was a catch-up provision that the state forced on the locals to be able to address it, and they're finally getting there, so there was a reduction this year.
Thank you.
Anything that anybody's seeing on this division for Kayla? Hearing none, let's move on.
All right, so the last one is debt service. Sorry for the fast scrolling. I can go all the way down here. All right, so debt service. Overall, we're going to see a $57,761 reduction from FY21, and that's largely due to the fact that we're paying off these bonds. And in FY21, there's going to be 2 bonds in particular that will be final payments. So then moving forward, those ones will be all done. Of note here, the Pinewood Road bond, We will be paying the principal and interest on that in 22. However, that's going to be covered from the proceeds that remaining. So that's why that's not on here. And then the other thing here is the 2020 TAN interest that's showing 0. There was a TAN within fiscal year 21 that we did not draw on. And I am proposing that we do not go forward again with another TAN. I think we're in a very good position right now.
To go with that, to repeat from last year, the reason the TAN was added, it was the first time you actually saw it, primarily because we were concerned with COVID cash flow. It gave flexibility in a year for unknown associated with that. So having that not be here, that's a good thing. Anything in the debt category? I like that it's going down. I like that Pinewoods is being taken care of, so at least that first year that the new bond is actually coming on is not a hit, to the point that we're always hearing in the social media world is the fact is debt never goes down because as soon as it comes off, it's replaced with something else. And that's not the trend that we're seeing here at this point in time. Anything else on debt? Anything else in general for discussion purposes tonight?
Alan, just for the benefit of the finance committee, when we did develop the fiscal year 21 budget, the one we're currently in, we did a reduction in the municipal budget by $323,939. So part of why our increase is so high in this fiscal year 22 is replacing a lot of those budget cuts, which we only intended to have cut for 1 year due to COVID-19. So I just wanted, I don't know if the finance committee knew that or not, but I just wanted to bring that to their attention.
Yeah.
Diane, oh, can I
Sorry.
ask a question?
Go.
Diane, can you clarify that budget cut? Was it a proposed budget cut? So for example, you proposed a certain budget and then reduced it by 300,000.
That's correct.
Or was it based on the prior year's budget and that you cut from there?
No, we initially proposed a budget that had an increase. And then when COVID-19 hit, we went back, the department heads and myself went back to the drawing board, and we looked at ways that we could cut because we just didn't know what the impact of the revenues were going to be. We also had we actually had 3 vacant positions. One we filled part-time through part of the year, and then the last quarter of this year, that person's going to full-time. But we had a position in the police department and in the public works department that we kept unfilled throughout the year. So that was the bulk of the savings right there.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully that the state's going to send money from COVID federal money. It will allow you to make up for some of that sacrifice.
I'm hoping so, Kurt. I'm hoping.
Anything else? I mean, this is the, because capital improvement took 45 minutes associated with that, it's the catch-all for some of the other divisions, but tackling technology and finance with Kayla, the benefit here, that is a good first night for getting our feet wet with a larger group.
Yeah, definitely.
If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to actually adjourn and get out of here for the night, and we can revisit again. Next Tuesday is what? Does anybody have that list of what we're going to cover next week? Diane?
I just had Tuesday, March 30th.
Yes.
That's going to be Lisbon Emergency, Police, Fire, and EMA.
That'll be a quiet night.
Yeah.
Exactly. That'll be shots fired.
I'll make the motion.
Now, before you do, Kayla, we asked that some of the specifics on the Lisbon EMS, the research that we were looking for the additional cost that we provide to assist them with their budget. Have you had a chance to nail down some of the range on that?
Alan, I asked Chief Leclerc and Chief McGee to get that information so that we can figure out, do the figures. They got to get us the hours first, and then we can go from there, and they're working on that.
I knew it was a huge exercise in payroll. That's why I was thinking of Caleb, but if you can get that to her, the fact that that is coming out that night, because I very much appreciate that they actually are living with where they were on their third year of their contract. But realistically speaking, I want to know 3 years later how they're doing towards the plan to be able to address. And if our police and fire are the primary first responders associated with this, it's not always the best that it could be. So, and the other thing that I had on my notes here, Kayla, your PowerPoint that you shared at the beginning of this on the capital improvement, can you share that with the group, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
If there's nothing else, Norm, I heard you. I need a second for Norm's motion.
I make that second.
All right, let's get out of here, and I thank you very much for everything. Good night, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Night all.
Right.
These meetings.